Live pictures of the New York City courthouse where jury selection for the much-talked-about trial against media mogul, hip-hop artist Sean Diddy Combs began today. It's going to last throughout the week. Trying to find someone who hasn't heard about the case will be one of the many difficult tasks. Diddy's alleged behavior is appalling, reprehensible if true. Diddy reportedly held so-called freak-offs with sex acts that we cannot describe here on family-friendly television. But here's the thing. All those raunchy stories come from what he's been accused of in civil lawsuits. 81 people accused him of sexual assault. 17 say they were under 18. 64 said they believe Diddy forced them to consume things laced with alcohol and/or drugs. 41 say they were at an event or party where they were assaulted. One of the lawsuits is sealed. 4 have been dismissed or settled. But here's the thing. He's only being charged with racketeering conspiracy, 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. None of the other things is he charged with in criminal court. If he's found guilty, he could very well spend the rest of his life in jail. But this trial on sex trafficking brings up a very critical question about what should be illegal, because the federal trafficking statute is beyond broad. With us now, Berger, former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, where the case is being tried. Mark Eiglarsh, former federal prosecutor, criminal defense attorney. Nice to see both of you. Ladies first. Berit, start with you. We'll put the list up. He's been accused of all of these awful things. They're talking about the video of him beating his girlfriend is going to be entered in. He's accused of, but he's charged with these very seemingly specific crimes that have nothing to do with all the bad stuff. Why?
Well, I wouldn't classify it that way. I think actually what he's been charged with encompasses a lot of the bad stuff that you discussed. Okay. For example, the racketeering conspiracy, one of the beauties of the racketeering statute is that it allows prosecutors to bring in a whole pattern of small predicate acts. So, for example, if there's something that happened that may not on its own be a federal crime that federal prosecutors wouldn't be able to charge standing alone, or if there's something that happened that may be outside the statute of limitations, with this RICO statute, they can bring all of these individual acts in, charge them as part of this pattern conspiracy that was all done on behalf of the enterprise. So I actually think this RICO conspiracy is a really strong charge.
I think it's very strong. I guess, Mark, the point I'm trying to get at is this idea of trafficking, which essentially means, as I read it, and I'm not a lawyer, but it's a way to charge people with something that is a really horrible sounding crime without necessarily having proof of all of these bad acts, because all you got to prove is that you brought someone across state lines and paid them for sexual services, even if those sexual services may have been consensual.
You make a very valid point, and the jurors may feel the exact same way. When the typical person hears of that particular charge, they think of one thing, and this may not actually be that, which is why jury selection, which is going on right now, is so key. Prosecutors need to make sure that they vet these jurors to be able to say that they can set aside their bias and they can find him guilty if the facts meet the law.
Boy, I feel like I'm the only person here who's the defense attorney for Sean Combs, which is something I never thought I would be in that position.
I'll defend him.
Okay, well, look, I think a lot of people would. His lawyer was originally on Cuomo. Take a listen.
He's fighting. He's fighting. He's innocent, and he's going to be able to show it. They never once said that these women didn't consent to what happened. Not once.
Can they all have consented, or were they minors and therefore the consent doesn't apply?
Maybe it's not what someone here would do in the bedroom, but that doesn't mean that what he did was a crime.
Is that where this is headed, Berit?
Yeah, this is exactly their defense. Their defense is going to be this was consensual. It might be perverse to many members of the jury, but it's not illegal. That's going to be their entire defense. And what the government's really going to have to overcome in order to meet its burden is saying, no, this is not charged because it's kinky. This is not charged because we disagree with the conduct. It's charged because it's illegal. It's charged because it's commercial sex acts. It's traveling over state lines. It's doing this through fraud and coercion. That's why we're charging it, not because it's kinky.
Mark, at the same time,
you get the right jurors.
Yeah,
you got to get the right jurors. You got to get the ideal scenario is you get as close to 12 people, all loving freak-offs and lube, and you take one step back because obviously they're not going to reveal that, but they've got to be open-minded to dismiss some of the very liberal, outrageous, and what you would say is offensive conduct as, well, that's not a crime. Where's the crime? And when you narrow it down, you get people who get cross-examined vigorously, and they can't be believed. And there's where you get your reasonable doubt, if at all.
So, Berit, I guess this is where I keep coming back to, you know, he's accused in all these civil suits of sexual assault, of these really awful and horrible things. And people know about this case. Everybody's heard about it. And then they get in, and the prosecutor is saying, oh, well, person A was paid. They came over to across state lines to Diddy's house. They engaged in all of these acts. And, well, was person A coerced? No, that's not what was happening. It was consensual. At some point, do jurors go, gee, I don't think somebody should spend the rest of their life in jail for that, as perverse as it is?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to have to show, and they've alleged some of these things in the indictment, they're going to have to show that it was more than just consensual sex that people might disagree with. They're going to have to show that this meets the threshold, not just of the law, but also that the facts are there, that they, you know, are enough to convince 12 people, right? I do think, though, when they see things like the video that we've all now watched, of him, I mean, that's pretty shocking conduct. So I think even with something like that, like, we don't know their case, we don't know all their evidence. The one piece that we have seen is pretty shocking. I can imagine that swaying 12 people.
Yeah, the video is. Mark, Berit, thank you both. Appreciate it. I think we can all agree we wish it was on television, but it will not be.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.